You know, sometimes you come across a phrase in an ancient text and it just stops you dead in your tracks. It can sound, well, confusing or even a little harsh. Today we're going to dive into one of the most jarring statements attributed to Jesus, a saying that on the surface sounds so cold it makes you wonder, what on earth could this possibly mean?
So here it is, straight from the Gospel of Luke. You've got a man who wants to follow Jesus, but he has one request first. Let me go and bury my father. I mean, that sounds like a totally reasonable, even sacred duty, right? But the response he gets is stunning. Let the dead bury their dead. It sounds so incredibly callous, doesn't it? Is Jesus really telling this guy to abandon his family in their time of grief?
Okay, so that's the central puzzle we're trying to solve. What could this possibly mean, and why does it sound so severe? To get to the bottom of it, we're going to have to dig into the language, the culture, and the whole context of this really powerful moment. And the first clue, it actually starts with a very clever play on words.
All right, so the first piece of the puzzle is all about the language. See, this isn't just some blunt command. It's actually a pretty profound play on words. Jesus uses the word dead in two totally different ways, all in the same sentence. Okay, let's break this down. The first dead he mentions, that's talking about people who are spiritually dead. You know, they're walking around, they're alive, but in this worldview, they're completely disconnected from God's purpose. Then you have the second dead, which is exactly what you'd think, people who are physically deceased.
So when you put it together, the message is powerful. Jesus is essentially drawing a line in the sand. He's saying, let the people who are spiritually indifferent handle the worldly tasks. Your call, the mission to announce the kingdom of God, is so urgent, it has to come before anything else. It's a total, radical reordering of priorities. But that's only half the story.
Yeah, to really get the full weight of this, we have to zoom out and look at the cultural context. And this is where a huge plot twist comes in. It turns out the man's request might not be what we think it is at all.
Okay, so in first century Jewish culture, burying your parent was absolutely a sacred duty. But here's the thing, it wasn't just a one-day event. It was a super long process. It could actually take up to a whole year, ending with a second burial where the bones were gathered up into what's called an ossuary or a bone box. We're talking about a massive, long-term family commitment. And this is the critical insight. A lot of scholars believe the man's father wasn't even dead yet. The phrase, let me first go and bury my father, was a common way of saying, hey, I'll get to it eventually. After my father passes away, after I get my inheritance, after all my family business is settled. So he wasn't asking for a few days off for a funeral, he was asking for an indefinite delay, maybe later, that could stretch on for years.
Now, this idea that it's all about excuses and delay, it becomes crystal clear when you look at the verses right before and right after this one. This whole chunk of Luke's gospel is really about one single theme, the true, full price of following this path. And the other things Jesus says here, they are just as intense.
So for instance, right before our guy comes along, someone else walks up and says, I'll follow you wherever you go. You'd expect Jesus to say, great, welcome aboard. But nope. Instead, he hits him with this really stark warning.
So what's the lesson here? It's about sacrificing comfort. Jesus is making it absolutely clear that this path isn't a route to earthly security. He literally points to himself, saying he doesn't even have a place to sleep. The point is, you have to be willing to trade that cozy nest of stability for the uncertainty of the road.
And then, immediately after the let the dead bury their dead conversation, a third person comes up. And guess what? They also have a condition. They say, let me just go say goodbye to my family first. And in response, Jesus gives this really powerful analogy about farming.
The lesson this time? It's all about having a singular focus. Think about it, a farmer plowing a field has to stare straight ahead to make a straight line. The second they look back, the road gets all crooked. So looking back here isn't just about nostalgia, it's a metaphor for a divided heart, a heart that's still tied to your old life and your old priorities. The call demands a completely undivided, forward-facing commitment.
Okay, so when we piece all of this together, you've got the clever wordplay, the crucial cultural context, and these bookend verses. What emerges is this really clear and, challenging picture of what discipleship means here. It really boils down to three core principles.
I like to call them the 3 Ps. First, you've got priority. The kingdom of God has to come before everything else, even the most valid-sounding earthly excuses. Second, poverty. Not necessarily being poor, but being prepared for a life that might not have all the worldly comforts and stability. And finally, perseverance.
This call is a forward-moving thing. Once you put your hand to that plow, looking back is just not an option.
So, what started out as a statement that sounded unbelievably harsh turns out to be this radical call for urgent, focused, and total commitment. And, it leaves us with a pretty challenging question for ourselves, doesn't it? In a world that is just filled with valid excuses and distractions, what does putting the hand to the plow really mean for us today?